Hello, and welcome to Kanesidder This. Today, my special guest is a civilian for the first time, a friend of mine that I've known since middle school. Trey Sanderson is my special guest.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Today we're going to be talking about Thoroughly Modern Millie, which opened Thursday the 3rd of July and is running through July 20th at Will Rogers Auditorium in Fort Worth. Millie is produced by a new company called Prism Theatrics, and they're people from Fort Worth who have spent some time in New York and outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and now they've decided that they want to do professional shows in Dallas. And for the lead in Thoroughly Modern Millie, they have brought in Anneliese Vanderpool, who, if you are a Disney fan, I believe it's Disney. Yes. If you're a Disney fan, she was Chelsea Daniels on That's So Raven. So that's the sort of draw for people who may not necessarily be inclined to go and see Thoroughly Modern Millie at Will Rogers Auditorium. You've got your radio Disney star, or your Disney TV star. Now, I have to say, watching her play Millie, she did not seem out of place with the rest of these performers. She sang beautifully, every bit as well as Sutton Foster, and I can almost hear the gasps from the theater snobs who may be listening to this to say that anyone could perform Millie as well as Sutton Foster, but I'm telling you, she was phenomenal. The cast is made up of people from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, as well as people that have been brought in that the producers knew or were familiar with their work. Most notably, as far as the leads are concerned, Keith Warren, who has performed in theaters all over Dallas, is playing Trevor Graydon, the role that was made famous by Mark Kudish. Mark Kudish on Broadway. I believe he was nominated for a Tony for this. And Mark Kudish also played the role of the proprietor in Assassins, which is a role that I did last year at Theater 3, name-dropping my own role. But anyway.
Keith was one of my personal favorites of the show.
Yeah, Trey was absolutely enamored by Keith, and he did do a fantastic job. I've seen Keith in the background for a lot of shows, and he really gets to step out and have his moment in the show. Absolutely hilarious, right on point. Tell everybody who he reminded you of.
The actor's name is
Patrick Warburton.
He played the Tick, and he was also in, was it Seinfeld?
Yes,
but he's spot on the man by look with the facial expressions. He brought life to the character, and to say the least.
And Gareth McRoberts plays Jimmy, who is the other love interest in the show.
Spectacular.
Fantastic voice. You know, in the first act, you don't really get to see him shine. But then he sings that song in the second act, and it was just phenomenal.
He had to prove himself, and he did.
Yes. Sharon Goodspeed Keaton is someone else who is also from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. She has performed just about everywhere, and she plays Muzzy Van Hosmeer, basically the woman who gets to sing the big black torch songs that... See, I'm trying to go from my Rain Man mind and remember everybody who was in the Broadway production. Can't remember.
But she plays the mentor to the lead.
Yes, exactly. And such a wonderful character. Great.
Amen.
Okay, here's basically the brass tacks. Coming into this show,
yes,
I did not know anything about Prism Theatrics. Didn't know what to expect. I knew that this was going to be a big budget show. I knew that they were planning on making a big splash right off the bat with their first show. Thoroughly Modern Millie is not my favorite musical. I like it. I appreciate it for what it is. I like more of the modern stuff. From 1970 on, which is funny because Thoroughly Modern Millie is only about 13 years old as a musical, but it is absolutely in the classical musical theater style.
Yes.
Lots of tap, lots of dance.
Absolutely. This show is my fourth musical, has moved to the top of my list with musicals with the storyline, but the presentation. I'm a father of a 17-year-old girl, and this show brings power to the women.
Yeah, power to the ladies.
The ladies are in control.
They are definitely front and center in this show for sure.
Not that the men lose one step. I was thoroughly impressed with those men.
But you have, you've got 1, 2, 3. You've got 2 lead roles.
Yes.
Then you've got Mrs. Mears and Fuzzy.
Amazing.
And then you've got Miss Flannery, who was hilariously played by Ashley Smith White.
Elbows.
Yes, elbows. You'll get that when you see the show. So there are lots of large roles for women, plus all the women who live in the boarding house.
Yes.
In the hotel. And there's lots of tap. There's lots of very clever choreography. A lot of it is a recreation of sorts from the Broadway production. And with that in mind, I have to say, the dancing was first rate.
Yes, and I actually asked Jason in intermission, is it just me or is this set design above par or above... it was what I was seeing was incredible to me.
Well, usually, at most of the theaters in town, with the exception of the Dallas Theater Center, sort of, and Uptown Players, which has the Cleta Humphreys.
Yeah.
Local performing groups don't get this kind of fly space to fly in different kind of set pieces and everything. And so doing this at Will Rogers Coliseum, or at Will Rogers Auditorium, you have that luxury.
Yeah,
have that luxury.
When she looked up and was in Manhattan, it was large.
Beautiful, beautiful backdrop
it
for
was
the
large.
skyline of Manhattan.
Yes.
The singers are top right across the board. Everybody sounded great. And another rarity is the size of the live orchestra. Yes. There was about a 20-piece orchestra for the show. It sounds full. It sounds polished. The orchestra really, I almost felt like I was at Lyric Stage because of the way that they do their orchestras. The orchestra was top notch.
It wasn't only music.
Give the props to the conductor.
It was sound effects.
Where's the crew page? Because I do want to give props to the conductor of this show.
That was him.
Did I pass it? Oh, there he is. Eugene Gwartz. I'm probably saying that wrong. Gwazd. Oh my goodness. Gwozdz. He is from Fort Worth, but he's based in New York City. He's the musical director, the arranger, and the pianist. He also played the piano. Fantastic work with the orchestra.
Amen.
Sounded wonderful. This is a classic style show in that you get an overture, you get an entr'acte. You don't get that with a lot of modern musicals. And so you have this 3 or 4 minutes at the top of the show where you're just reveling in
There's
the
a sense of Americana.
Yeah.
There's a sense of Americana.
It's the history of musical theater.
Yes.
Again, it's a 13-year-old musical, which is strange, but it does take place in the 20s, so you've got flappers.
You got Gershwins, you got Parkers.
Dorothy Parker.
Cameos, but still.
Cameos. So there were a couple of roles that I thought were not as polished as the others. Mrs. Mears does a fine job. She does a really funny performance. I'm biased because I did see Harriet Harris on Broadway, and Harriet.
But all the R's and L's were in the right spaces.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll understand again. Don't want to give it away, but it's such a wonderful character. It's a character that's so wrong. It is. There's a lot of wrong.
So wrong, it's perfect.
Exactly, and also there's a reason for it being wrong.
Yes.
And again, don't want to give it away.
You can't.
It's so much fun. If you know the show, you know exactly what we're talking about. And I really, like I said, I didn't know what to expect coming in, but coming out of the show, I have to say, this did not look like a first production by a new production company.
Notwithstanding, if you'll remind me of what we spoke of before, their expectations were they were trying to bring Broadway quality.
Well, here's
what was it?
I'll just read the quote from the back of the program. Blake Floyd, who is the executive producer of Prism Theatrics, he says, "There's entertainment and then there's theater. Many of the cast and crew working in this production have proven their talents on the big stage in New York. I think it's time we bring them home and give everyone in Fort Worth the chance to see just how fantastic they are. Now, I am ambivalent about that statement.
Yeah.
I'm ambivalent about that statement because I have recently seen performances in Dallas from Soho Cinders at Uptown Players, to Titanic at Lyric Stage, to Les Miserables at the Dallas Theater Center, which granted is a mix of local and brought-in talent at Dallas Theater Center. But I have witnessed firsthand the tremendous vocal talent that we have in this city.
Yes, in the area.
And so I think some people in the local theater biz might have seen this quote
and have a little trepidation
and wonder, who do these people think they are?
Cat?
But according to Blake, about 9 members of the cast have been brought in from out of town. The rest of them, I think it's a cast of like 24. The rest of them are local talent. And they have put in some of the leads, like I said, Keith Warren and Sharon Keaton, in roles that are, pretty big roles for the show. So it's not like just the ensembles from Dallas Fort Worth.
That's right.
And so I have to give them credit for putting a great cast together. I did watch Annalise, and Annalise definitely has the star power, but I can think of probably 3 actresses in Dallas, Fort Worth. I keep saying Dallas, and I apologize for that. I know of at least 3 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area who could play Millie just as well as she did. So it's not a slight to her.
No.
It's just saying, we got the talent.
There are others.
We got the talent here.
But she knocked it out of the park.
She did. It was great. And your 17-year-old daughter watched that So Raven, and
went
of course
bonkers.
Now has an autograph from
my
Annalise.
Lord. Yeah.
Annalise was very, very, very sweet after the show.
Yep.
And now she has not only does she has an autograph, she has a father who is going to do everything he can to get her to see the show before
That's
the 20th.
Absolutely.
So you're in a space that isn't used very much. Will Rogers Auditorium is sort of past its prime. Now we've got Bass Hall.
Yes.
Now we've got, just like in Dallas, we've got the Windspear, and the Majestic is somewhat forgotten sometimes. And Will Rogers Auditorium is not the prettiest inside.
Even on the outside facade, but once you got through the doors.
But I'll tell you, what's important is not the architecture in the house. What's important is what you can do on the stage. And the lighting.
The acoustics.
The acoustics are great. And the sets that you're able to put in there.
Yep.
It's great.
There's
enough fly space. It looks like a touring show.
Amen.
And so I do have to give it props for that. I'm curious as to how this is going to work, because I'm going to tell you, if you live anywhere close enough to see the show and you're a fan of Thoroughly Modern Millie, or a fan of classic musicals with tap dancing and stuff like that, you really need to give this show a shot. You need to go and see it. You have another 2 weeks to do so. And it is definitely worth a chance. It's worth seeing. It's a fantastic night of entertainment. And like I said, not my favorite musical, and I still had an absolute blast watching it.
Me too. I felt that the musical, it crescendoed, it built as it went along. It continued to build. Jason pointed at me after intermission, said, right here. And it was a moment where...
the showstopper.
The fuse had been lit, but it was getting to the explosion, and from that moment on, it continued to grow until the end.
That is one thing that I wanted to say. My main criticism at intermission was that one of the hardest things to do in a musical is to have this unstoppable train that starts with the opening number, and the energy just builds and builds and builds.
Like a locomotive. That's what you were saying.
It just keeps going and barrels through and is consistent, but also has a bit of a build to it. And I got to say, here we are. It's 4th of July weekend.
Yes.
We saw it
on the 5th.
We saw it on the 5th of July. And it is an untested entity with Prism Theatrics.
At a very unused place.
A different place to get to. The audience the night we saw the show was disappointingly small.
I think so too.
And sometimes,
especially for what we were rewarded with.
Absolutely. And I have to say that affects a performer. Whenever you have a small house, even if that small house is receptive, because the audience was very receptive.
They needed feedback.
That energy that you get from a full house, that you get from a group of a bunch of people sitting in the audience, throwing that energy at the stage, it really can affect your performance.
It bolsters it.
Yeah. And so when you don't have that, it can be very, very difficult to get through.
We did not notice that from them.
Right.
You did because you know what you're looking for.
Well, I noticed it in the first act, but I gotta say that second act was
when you touched me and said, "Here it is."
Yeah. Well, and there is an amazing showstopper at the top of Act 2 called "Forget About the Boy."
Yes.
Speaking of girl power.
Yes.
An amazing song that is just an absolute, like I said, a showstopper.
She had already opened up, but that's when you saw the range come in.
Well, and that's the other thing I wanted to say. If you know Thoroughly Modern Millie, you know that there is a solo towards the end of the show called Gimme Gimme. And it's what basically made Sutton Foster a star on Broadway. So I was watching Annalise and seeing that she was doing a very, as good a job as you could hope for. But I knew that Gimme Gimme was coming. And I was like, if she doesn't nail this number, that's going to be the telling point.
Yeah.
That
it could be a detraction.
Someone else should have played this role.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, she knocked it out of the park.
She did.
She absolutely knocked it out of the park. And I don't know, what is it? She's worked at Pasadena Playhouse and...
That's So Raven. She also
I'm looking for her theater work.
Esther and Meets Me in St. Louis. She was also in Oklahoma.
Laurie in Oklahoma. Ava Perón in Evita. So she's Marion and the Heiress. Well, the Heiress is a play. That's not even a musical. So she's definitely done her. She's done her time on stage.
Yeah.
So she isn't just a ringer that's brought in. The Broadway production of Chicago has had just about everyone and their dog in the show, and it's getting
all those names.
It's getting to be a joke that some of the people were brought in that never should have been brought in.
Yes,
and I will not name names.
We don't have to.
But I might put pictures of a few of them up on the screen.
But we'll say Annalise Vanderpool
a
few more times this evening.
Yes, exactly, because it's such a great name to say. And I want to make it very clear, she is not one of those stunt casting things. She absolutely has the chops to do this, and she does a damn good job in the role. I want to see if there's anybody else that we
missed out.
Really wanted to. Mrs. Mears is just so much fun to watch, and Andrea Enright it's just a blast to watch. We mentioned Miss Dorothy Brown. Another. This is someone who is. Looks like she spent a lot of time in New York and also in Santa Cruz. That's where she got her BA. This is her first show in Texas, but her name is Elise Youssef, and she plays sort of the best friend, the girl just off the bus.
The new off the
bus girl.
Yeah.
And she, again, is one of those where in the first act you see her do a little bit, but the second act she just takes off. She does such a great job.
Yeah.
And then we have Ching Ho and Bun Fu. The Siamese cats of this production. And
they stay in the laundry room.
Yes. Jackson Perrin, who plays Bun Fu, is finishing up his last semester at Texas State University, where he'll get his BFA in musical theater. So he's a local boy. Ryan Finley, however, has done stuff off Broadway and in Brooklyn. And he's an AMDA alum. I'm going to have to see if my friend Holly knows him. Ryan Finley plays Ching Ho. And
he does a good job at stealing hearts.
So one of them is from Texas. The other is someone that was brought in. And you couldn't tell the difference between their talents. No. Both of them were fantastic.
No, they were brothers.
Yeah. And I also have to give the director also choreographed, Brandon Mason. That's who we haven't mentioned. I don't know Brandon Mason's work, but I got to tell you, he could... The work that I saw on that stage, from the design elements to the choreography to the performances that were given, it's as good as can be.
Yes.
It's as good as you could hope for.
Yes.
And like I said, I went in with a certain amount of skepticism to this show, and it not being one of my favorite shows of all time, and had a blast. I really enjoyed it. The music is by Janine Tesori, who sometimes writes cosmic groovy avant-garde stuff. So it was also kind of a surprise to see her do.
It was pleasant for there to be big band in there.
Very, very 1920s.
Yep, it sure was. And pleasant. And pleasant.
So I got to give props to Brandon Mason and Blake Floyd for this endeavor. It's ballsy, it's gutsy, it's a huge risk, and the show closes on July 20th. There's no show on the 19th, they said, for some reason. But look for tickets. There is a discount you could find. I'm not going to, I won't give it away, but look around for a discount if you'd like to get a discount for the show. And I wanted to see specifically if they mentioned it in the program, because I want to get it right. If you are a member of the armed services, if you are a policeman or fireman, if you are a teacher, you can get free tickets to this show, which I think must be said, must be acknowledged. And during the curtain speech, they acknowledged those people that were there.
Absolutely, they did.
And that also speaks volumes about the character.
That was heartwarming.
Shows. Yeah,
that was heartwarming.
Well, we've done our duty. Can you think of anything else you wanted to say?
I would say that for a layperson to go into a musical and with an open mind, and I carry one as often as I can, from the moment, well, actually, before they even bring up the curtain, you get to hear the orchestra lead you into the opening act. And from that moment till the end, I felt like I was seeing a top-tier performance. And I would validate myself by conferring with Mr. Jason
as
here.
as the resident cynic in this podcast.
Yes, sir.
Which, and I'm a bit of a cynic, but I usually...
It's a critique. There's no cynicism.
I usually give more props than I do, at least on the podcast. I don't give as many, snarky comments. But I gotta say, I give props top to bottom in this show.
Good show. Do. Great show.
So give it a chance.
Go
and
to see the show. Yep.
It's a lot of fun. You will enjoy it.
You will.
And thank you, Trey, for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you for having me here with you.
Had a blast, and we'll see you next time on Kanesidder This.
Thank you.